We made Christmas ornaments using 3D printed tools, air dry clay, and acrylic paint. We'll show you the whole process, from digital sketches and 3D modeling to the finished decorations on our tree. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable and enjoy. I asked Marco to create up to 10 animal illustrations with a similar base shape, so they would all feel like part of the same collection. He also made a vector version for me to use as a starting point for 3D modeling. At first I made a cutter and a stamp for one illustration as a test, and I also created a stamp for our logo to apply to the back of the ornaments. I tried making a sample piece from modeling clay and quickly realized that it's much firmer than air dry clay. So stamping and cutting the design required more pressure. Plastic wrap on top didn't work well either, so I decided to skip it for now. But the test turned out to be really helpful. I discovered a few issues that should be fairly easy to fix. The sharp, small details in the illustrations caused the clay to stick in tight areas, making clean cuts difficult. The cutter was also too tall compared to the stamp, which made it uncomfortable to use them together. And while the logo size on the stamp was fine, its base needed to be more rounded, so it wouldn't leave marks with sharp corners. Marco updated the illustrations for me, rounding all the shapes and removing small details. I actually like these new designs even more. Once I had the updated vectors, I imported them into Blender and started modeling. I converted the curve to a mesh, offset the shape twice, fixed overlaps, and filled it in. Then I extruded the handle and the blade, corrected the face orientation, and added chamfers to the handle. Creating models specifically for 3D printing is much simpler than modeling for other purposes, so I didn't worry too much about perfect topology and it still worked really well. Next, I moved on to the stamp. I offset the original shape inward and separated it to create a solid base. Then I converted the stamping part to a mesh, cleaned up unnecessary edges, and extruded both the base and the stamp itself. I replaced round objects with spheres wherever possible and added a chamfer to the base. Once the process was set up, I repeated it for all the animals, and I also created 3 simple illustrations for Christmas balls and modeled cutters for those as well. Finally, I 3D printed everything. It took quite some time, so a few of the lights got a little tired by the end. Even with all the adjustments to the models, they still weren't perfect. The stamps, for example, weren't thick enough, which made separating them from the clay a bit tricky, but they worked. With all the prep work done, I could finally move on to the fun part. I used chopsticks as guides to flatten the clay evenly to the right thickness. Then pressed the stamp, cut out the shape, and set aside the excess clay to reuse for the next ornament. I didn't do much research, but I did watch a few videos where people recommended covering the table with parchment paper. That turned out to be a bad idea. The clay is very wet, and even though my parchment paper was waxed, it got soggy, wrinkled, and even left a print on the back of my ornament. I'm not sure why I kept working on it, but I did. To give you an idea of how wet the clay is, look at how much it shrinks as it dries. See? So weird. Okay, let's get back to the process. After a few repetitions, I became more confident in what I was doing, and my ornaments started to look better. When I started working on the Christmas balls, the process was twice as fast compared to the animal shapes. I used a wet sponge to glue down tiny fibers that appeared after cutting the shapes, but you have to be very careful with the water so the clay doesn't get too sticky. I made 27 ornaments in total using 2 packs of clay. Then came 48 hours of drying, and the Christmas balls needed even longer, probably around 72 hours. Next, I decided to sand everything because in my opinion, sanding can fix even the worst pieces. Look at the difference. I used 360 grit followed by 600 grit sandpaper. I typically enjoy sanding but these ornaments had so many details that after a while I didn't enjoy it as much. After sanding, I traced the surfaces with a brush soaked in water to smooth everything out. The next step was applying the primer, my least favorite part. The primer is very sticky and hard to apply evenly, and I had to sand everything again after it dried. But to be honest, sanding primer makes a huge difference. Finally, I applied 2 coats of base color acrylic paint. Working with it was nice, it smelled good, and even if it didn't look perfect while applying, it looked fine once it dried. Before starting the actual painting, I needed to mix the colors. I'm not that good at it yet, so I got some nice colors, just not the ones I had planned. After that, it was Marco's turn to start painting. At first, he created digital lettering for the Christmas balls, then he transferred it onto tracing paper. And after that, onto the ornament with a pencil. Finally, he painted those beautiful letters with a tiny brush. And honestly, I didn't think it was possible to make them look so nice, but he did. Painting was the longest part of the process. The first coat of acrylic always looks messy, so we had to apply 2 and sometimes 3 coats, then came 2 coats of glossy acrylic varnish, and now our ornaments are ready. We just need to attach the hanging threads and decorate the tree. That's it for this project. Thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Happy holidays!